Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fired Up, the podcast for marketers working in early and late stage startups. I'm Morgan McClintock, the CEO of startup marketing agency Firebrand. We've launched this podcast to interview the best in the business, but I'm not going to do it alone. So please meet my co-hosts.
I'm Nicole Pytel, Firebrand's VP of Content Marketing.
And I'm Chris Ulbrich, Firebrand's Head of Media Relations.
I'm Ian Lipner, a tech PR and crisis communications veteran.
We'll drop a new episode each week, so there's plenty of fuel for your marketing fire. Get the spark you need to take your startup to a whole new level. Hello, everyone. We're back with another edition of Fired Up, and today we're going to be talking about how to manage an agency. I'm joined today by Nicole Pytel. Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Morgan. Hey, everybody.
And by Ian Lipner. Hey, Ian.
Hi, Morgan. How are you doing today?
I am great. So we thought that as an agency, we have worked with some great clients and we worked with some challenging clients, and we wanted to sort of unpack, how do you get the most out of your agency? What are the relationships that work the best? And so that we can kind of tease out the best rules so you can get the most value from that relationship. And it is a relationship, really. And it's an important one because it takes time, it takes budget to invest in these. And so we've chosen 7 different points here to sort of walk through. And I think whether you're working with an advertising agency, a PR agency, an SEO agency, a content agency, it doesn't matter the type of agency. This is a relationship, and so we thought we'd be able to bring some good perspective to all our audience today about this. So why don't we dive straight in? And I think this is an obvious one. Like, the first point is you got to choose the right agency, because agencies are all really different, but choosing the right partner up front sets up the relationship for success, right, Nicole?
It absolutely does. And I think people think, oh, I need an agency. They're all the same. They're a dime a dozen. Maybe I can't trust any of them. Who knows? But it really is very much trying to find the right partner. Do they do what you need? Are they good at what you need? Because a lot of agencies will tell you that they're great at everything. How are you guys going to work together? There's a lot that goes into this. You're going to be talking to your agency all the time. It's not necessarily just about the work. It's also about, kind of communicating. And, if you have a question, are they there to answer it? If something goes wrong, are they there to help you take care of it? So there's a lot more that goes into it than just what you see in an SOW.
Yeah, I think that's right, Nicole. By the way, the steps that the company, the potential client takes to get you to that point of SOW are really important. Whether it's a formal process or, it's quick and action oriented because there's a trusted relationship already in place or a great referral. It's really important that the way you go about assessing those agencies is organized and consistent, because otherwise you can end up with a lot of last minute end arounds and misunderstandings about what the intended scope is, simply because you haven't given, an organized brief to those that you're considering.
I think that's a really great point. And I think especially for our startup marketing friends where there's not a huge marketing department, you don't have a ton of time, having that process makes it easier on you as well. If you know, hey, every time we need to get an agency to do something for us, this is the 3-step process that we're going to follow. This is the brief that we're going to send them. This is how we're going to structure a call with them. I think it just makes it efficient for everybody all the way around, in addition to helping you find a better partner.
Finding the right partner is really important. When I speak to people as they approach us, maybe we've been referred in, our goal really is not to try and work with every prospect. Our goal is to see if we're the right agency for them. Do we have the domain expertise? Can we solve the actual problem with the services that we offer? Do we have the capacity? Do our budget expectations meet, right? You don't want to hire an agency where you're putting all of this budget, consuming all this budget, And that sort of ramps the expectations up. Like, this absolutely has to deliver, and the company sort of feels uncomfortable with the level of investment. Equally, you don't want to be the biggest fish necessarily in the pond, where the agency's sort of future is all dependent on your work, your scope of work, because are you really getting advice there, or are they just telling you what you want to hear? So you got to get the budget level right. A good friend of mine once said, sort of, once you get the pricing and budget right, that's sort of like gravity. It goes away. But if it's off and it's too big or too small, you're always going to feel that across the relationship. So finding out the right partner and understanding really what they can do. Are they giving you just the services that you want to buy, or what else could they go for in the future? So, you start today, but in tomorrow's needs, because startups grow very quickly, you might start at this particular scope, but tomorrow, are they going to be able to work on it? Because onboarding an agency, it's like hiring a new person. They need time to ramp up. They need to be briefed. They need to understand your culture, what you like, what you don't, the words you use, the deep tech on your team, like any member of staff. So you don't want to be switching that. So taking the time up front to choose the right partner, because there are agencies that are all very different. They work, some are very formal, some are very relaxed, some are very technical. Cultural fit. Do you like these people? Do you want to spend time with them every day, talking to them and slacking back and forth with them and meeting with them regularly? The classic elevator test. If not, and you're not getting enthused to work with them, then find someone else. There are tens of thousands of agencies. Lots of them are going to be very accomplished and be able to solve your problem. Find the right one. We do really think like that time up front, super important. Nicole, you also thought a little bit about how they market themselves. Talk to me a little bit about that.
That's a big one. And usually agencies have this problem of they're so busy marketing their clients that they don't necessarily market themselves. But how they market themselves can be a really fantastic window of how they're going to market you. And I know with our internal marketing here at Firebrand, of course, a huge part of it is helping startup marketers, keeping them informed on what's happening, what's developing, what are the trends, what are some new tactics, what are some new strategic insights. But it's also about showing companies, the ones that we work for and the ones that we may work for one day, that we know what we're doing. We know how to put together a good website. We know how to put together strong SEO. We know how to put together, strong content marketing, a strong PR plan, because people are going to look for that. They're going to want to see that's where you're going to walk the walk. Anybody can say, oh, we're great at this. We do all these great things. But if somebody can go on your website or check out your news section or sign up for your email list, that's going to tell them a lot more than anything you can say in a Zoom call.
Right. If they can't do it for themselves, are they going to be able to do it for you? Good acid test. The second point here is to set the right goals with the right resources. Ian, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, I think this is a super important part. And I think it's the part that companies maybe are more optimistic sometimes than they should be in that get to know you process. So what do we mean? Resources isn't just budget. It's the fuel that your campaigns are going to need. It's ideas. It's people unblocking workflows. It's a desire to do something new. Resources can include that which is needed to make internal business cases. So we need our contact to be willing to spend the time on our collaboration. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're sitting in there wordsmithing with us. Hopefully we can manage most of that. But it does mean caring just as much, if not more, about each of the initiatives we're trying to push through and helping keep those unblocked, helping make sure we have those spokespeople we need, that we have the stats that we need, that we have the communications assets that we need all along the way. And also making sure that the people they're reporting into have the right expectations given the resources that are available. It's very easy for someone who doesn't take great care of agencies to simply smack their hands together and say, well, that agency didn't execute what we were asking for, and never really deliver an understanding upwards of, hey, these are the resources that are required for that set of expectations, and maybe we should provide more resource or change expectation. And then I think also understanding that the agency isn't a magic box that you simply kind of just drop off materials and leave be. We need to talk about, hey, here's what's working, here's what isn't, here's what we're seeing the media care about in the case of public relations. How does that differ from what your buyers care about, or what's top of mind for them most? And how is it the same? And can you get us a conversation with that product manager or that account manager who is working directly with your customers? Can we get a customer to talk to us, right? All those things should be thought about from the beginning, before you dedicate budget, before you dedicate KPI goal setting time. It needs to be an honest allocation of your time and your resources.
Yeah, there's a big difference between partner and babysitter. I think some people, if they've never worked with an agency before, or maybe they haven't worked with a really good one, they kind of see themselves as this babysitter. Oh, well, what should I write about? Or what should we pitch? Or what keywords should we try to rank for? Whereas it should be a partnership on both sides. Just like you're looking for a great partner, you need to be a great partner. And to Ian's point, a lot of that is being that connection between the agency and the rest of your organization. When we sit down to onboard a new client, some of our questions are huge and may not seem totally related to our exact scope. But when we're saying, why are you winning deals? Why are you losing deals? What are your biggest differentiators? What are you hearing in the market? What are your goals for this year? What is the overall business objective for the year? It may seem a little weird if you're just coming on to do a product launch or just to do, a short email marketing program, but those are very important questions. And if you don't have the answer to those questions, you need to find them. It just all goes back to being a really, really great partner. It doesn't have to be incredibly time consuming. I think that's something people are afraid of as well. Like, oh, I've got to just spend all my time with this agency. Would it just be faster for me to try to do the work myself? And it doesn't have to be time consuming. It just has to be time well spent.
I want to talk about goals here because we've talked about setting the right resources, but goals are really important. You must have goals. This is where the tension can come, I think, between an agency and a client, because if there's no relationship there, by default, the client wants the highest goals possible, and sort of cynically speaking, the agency wants them to be as low as possible because then they can claim success. So you do get that tension. But if you have a good relationship, we should be looking at the goals together, and we should be thinking about, hey, how can we hit 80% of this? You don't want them to be so easy that really this isn't impressive work. And you don't want them to be, hey, I'm just going to set these goals so that you'll never, keep jumping, jump higher, because that's demotivating and you're never going to really succeed. If you can hit 70, 80% of them, great. They're hard enough. There's some stretch goals. There's some stretch goals in there, but there are other ones which we can accomplish, and we can kind of show a good trend. I often think about, hey, where do we come from and where are we going? And what else do we want to see in this next quarter or the next 6 months? And a red flag for me sometimes when we have these initial conversations is, oh, well, we want to get, like on the PR side, we want to have our CEO in the Wall Street Journal. Okay, of course. Every company wants to be in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times. Have you been in any of those business publications today? Have you been, what is the profile of this person? It's a great goal, but is it a realistic goal? And for some companies, absolutely. But for a very early stage startup, you haven't got any public profile. You've got to start building up to that. So yeah, it's great to have a lofty goal and to push yourself. But internally, you should not be setting an expectation that I'm going to hire this agency and we're going to spend this money, we're going to invest this thing. And if those goals are not attainable within the realistic time frame, because you're just setting yourself up for success. And it's easy for an agency to say, oh yeah, sure, we'll get you into that. And then 3 months, 6 months down the line, oh yeah, well, we didn't. but you've spent the money then and you've lost the time. It's better to have the harder conversation up front and say, yes, we do want to be in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times. Here's what it's going to take to do that, and the resources and the kind of timeline, and here are the steps along that path. That is a much better foundation for a relationship. So I think having the difficult conversation and being realistic about goals, and that doesn't mean not being ambitious, is really important up front if you want a good foundation. And then communicating that out to the rest of the company, because you want to, as the person who is appointing the agency and is running point on this, for the agency to be successful and to make, to look good, right? This is great for our careers if we have a great partner. We've worked with a number of people and worked with them as they move up through the ranks, manager, director, VP, CMO, working with them time and time again because they look great working with a great partner and they hit the goals because we're setting the right expectations and the right budget.
I would actually double down on that and argue, maybe this is controversial, but I think setting goals, at least in terms of media relations goals, I'll speak about that in particular, which, our outcomes are less easy to, I shouldn't say easy, less determined in advance. I think it's a terrible time to set those kinds of objectives at the very beginning of a relationship. If you're, used to, and you have a lot of experience kind of measuring your program, it might be different, right? If you have a lot of data to lean on. But how easy is it for somebody who wants to win your business to simply say, we'll do one more than they said each month of that, right? And I've lost pitches where I know that was sort of how the decisions were being made, was a PR by the pound kind of decision. Well, they're saying you're going to get 20 for, $15K a month, and you're saying 10 to 15. It can be tempting for an agency to just say, hey, well, we'll figure it out later. I don't think there's tons of agencies who are trying to win that way. But gee, if you need some business and your choice is to add one more to the pile as a promise, I think there are agencies who will choose that. So if you're the one selecting an agency, it seems to be, to me, a risky way to go about it. Hearing about how they set goals is more interesting, I think. Asking them to assess your past performance and determine, based on what they know, what your coverage levels are, for example, if they seem about right, can be meaningful. I think you need some time to get underway. I'm a fisherman and I can catch fish in a lot of different kinds of settings. I'm speaking literally now. But you just show me a piece of water with not a lot of information on it other than, okay, maybe a map. I'm not ready to promise my kid that I'm going to catch fish that day. Doesn't mean I won't. And if you give me another week, I'm going to catch fish. But I think goal setting is something that needs context. And maybe I'm getting a little ahead of us in our discussion, but I think that context comes as part of the brief.
A big part of this goal discussion is seeing what kind of expertise this agency has, because a good agency will ask the questions like Ian's asking, like, okay, well, is it freshwater? Is it saltwater? Like, what bait should I be using? Trying to figure out, where are you at? Where are you trying to go? And if an agency just says, oh yeah, we can absolutely do that, knowing full well that they'll just kind of figure it out as they go along. Maybe it'll work. Maybe they don't. That's not the right partner for you. And so sitting down, it's a great way for you to tap into some expertise that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. We work with startups and scale-ups all day long. And so we can sit down with our clients and say, look, this worked for this client over here, or we saw this client with this problem, and this is really how we solved it. Or we've worked with a lot of startups at your stage before, and that goal is just a little too lofty but here are the steps that we're going to take to get you there. So I think that's really where the rubber meets the road. It shouldn't just be like, oh, these are your goals. Great. We're going to run off and go achieve them. It's really this two-way conversation, and you could learn an awful lot from the agency about how you're setting goals and what's actually attainable.
So let's talk about the third point here, which is briefing the agency. And Nicole, you said earlier, be ready to talk a lot about the company. Like, you're going to dive deep into the history of the company, deep into the product, the sales motion, obviously, all the messaging, differentiators, value prop, all that good stuff, why you win, why you don't win. I think at the beginning, it's hard to overdo the amount of communication. And I often find companies are surprised by how much information you really need. And so get as much ready and just send all the decks, investor decks, sales decks, marketing, like the one pages, all the calendars, the content calendar, the event schedule, all the stuff that you've got. Have all that ready so that the agency can just sort of digest it. That might take them some time to eat through all that and to really internalize it. But I think it allows some time, as if they are an employee, right? Allow them some time to really be properly onboarded and to expose them. If you've gone through a decent selection process, be ready to expose them to many different people in the organization so they can get a real holistic view of it. And so that you're not the only gatekeeper to the company and they know who to go to. I mean, obviously they'll ask permission, but what you want is for the agency to know a lot more than you do, right? And be able to find out things that you don't know and bring you things. So I think at the beginning, time spent on this is really important. And that sort of mitigates against very sort of short project-oriented work, because that briefing is the same of whether you're working for 3 months or 3 years. You have to still bring someone up to speed in order to deliver, even if it's a 90-day piece of work. So that's why I'd say about briefing.
To add to that, what we find is that it's hard for most single contacts to have a real view of the timing of everything that is happening in their marketing organization. And speaking for the PR side, we're trying to have as much context and awareness as possible as to what people outside the organization are going to see, because we want to join in a chorus, right? We don't want to be all of a sudden singing a different line while you're talking about one subject. We don't want to be talking about something else, or worse, ruin the timing of some good piece of information. We do see instances where we end up helping keep those things coordinated. And sometimes it comes at the beginning during this briefing part. So it's sort of a tool, I think, for any marketing leader to get a good radar of what's going on, around their organization at that time, without them having to go and ask all of their colleagues, hey, what are you working on late? What's in the corner over there? What's in the future over there? It's sort of a great way to get a snapshot of what the next 90 days are going to look like, because that's what we're going to be ready to show what we can do those first 90 days. We want to hit the ground running. So we probably are asking more questions than you would.
And there's a little bit of maybe not onboarding, but continual boarding, for lack of a better term, because we had one client, recently that it was like, we haven't spoken to your sales team in a few months. Let's see what questions they're getting. Let's see what objections they're getting. Let's see if anything in the market has changed, because that's going to inform our next set of demand gen campaigns. That's going to help inform our blog strategy. It's going to help inform our email strategy. So yeah, there's a ton of information and a ton of questions you're going to be asked in the very beginning. And I think I speak for all of us when I say I'd much rather have way too much information than trying to guess what you're all about or what you've done in the past or what's worked and what hasn't. But also part of that relationship is everybody sitting down and every now and then going, okay, well, where are we at? Has anything changed since we had that really nice onboarding conversation? And a lot of times for the stakeholder, they learn stuff as well. To Ian's point, they can learn a lot. We sat in on a sales call. Our marketing stakeholder was like, oh, it's a really great point. And you know what? We're going to jump on that. And so it's a great opportunity for everybody. So don't think of it as, having to cater to the agency. Really keep your eyes and ears open as well.
Okay, so we've chosen the right partner. We've set the goals. We've briefed the agency. Now we're going to get into working together. Some tips for just tactically, day to day, in the trenches, working together. Ian, what do you see as some of the best practices here?
Well, I think getting involved in an ongoing conversation as early as possible. It's like a text string, right? Like we use Slack, right? And as soon as we start, right, we're saying, hey, we noticed this in the news. What does this mean? Using that period of learning to just start more conversations, touch more people, on their side of the marketing organization, among their subject matter experts. I think that's a great way to start, is just get that conversation going. Having a channel like that, that's how we always do business, but shouldn't take that for granted. Some folks, they're still working on email and that contact isn't regular enough. So why do you want that? It's not because the agency isn't doing enough. It's because more ideas spring forth, right? And more collisions turns into more opportunities. It just does. And we love it when our contacts are directly connecting us with that subject matter expert early on in the relationship. For what we do on the media relations side, a lot of it is time oriented, right? We might have a rapid response opportunity. So the better we know the subject matter experts, the fewer stops there are along the way to get out with our comment first. Knowing that the agencies, when they're ramping up in particular, has to try to find some focus. This isn't the time, once you're kind of getting going, to start throwing all sorts of stuff at them. Now, our agency happens to be able to do a lot more things than a bunch of agencies. We talk about our multiplier marketing approach. That means if somebody over here says, oh, you guys help with SEO, well, that starts a new conversation. But I mean more like, we were talking to this reporter over there. I'm not sure who the last one was that connected to him. Can you talk to them and connect with them once? And over here, we want you to do a byline that hasn't been finished. And too many different things, right, can limit our ability to be effective in those early days where we're building trust with your organization. So I think that's pretty key. And then I guess understand that like our role isn't to simply fill orders. Our role is to come up with new things to do. When we offer you our advice, whether it's, hey, we don't think we should do that, or why don't we do something else? This is the time to kind of let us be an agency and let us do some work. Let us be the ones that maybe take a little bit of short-term risk of our own reputation, saying we think this is going to work, and allow us to go ahead and implement our best practice. Now, I know Nicole can talk a little bit about how that looks on the marketing side too. I mean, there's so much specific best practice that you don't want to have to spend a ton of time explaining, I guess is the best way that I could say it.
No. And I think talking about, some of the advice you mentioned, I think if your agency isn't being consultative, you're not getting your money's worth. We do have some clients that want us to perform at more of a tactical level, like, hey, here's kind of the overarching strategy. We need kind of an arm of our organization to actually execute it. But it's also our job to say, okay, cool, we can do that. But I took a spin through your GA4 metrics, or I took a spin through your HubSpot engagement metrics, and here's what I found. So on that next piece you want us to work on, how about we position it this way? Or maybe instead of this email over here, we do that email over there. And you can feel free to say no, absolutely. But those are the kinds of real nuggets that you're going to get from a good agency, instead of just saying, okay, you want us to be a tactical arm. I'm going to go write 5 blog posts and 12 emails, and here you go proofread them for me. So I think that's a really important part. And I know, Morgan, you had mentioned before we chatted, about praise and feedback. And I was like, well, we don't want praise because we're insecure. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want praise and feedback because we want to know what you like, what you don't like. If we wrote something that really hit the mark that you loved, or you took it to your sales team and they loved it, or they've given it to prospects and they love it, amazing. I want to hear that. Not because they need a pat on the back, so I can give you more of that. Alternatively, if there's something that, maybe you weren't super crazy about, I want to know that too, so it doesn't happen again. So I think there's a lot that goes in here of best practice. We could probably do an entire podcast just on best practices of the day-to-day, quite honestly.
The feedback part is really important. All the time that I've spent in PR, there's always a few real surprises where you think, hey, we're hitting the marks, we're hitting our goals, client seems happy, and then suddenly we'll hear feedback, well, we're going to change the direction we're going because these things that happened over here that we never talked to you about, right? Or this gap between what you were doing that was tactically effective but wasn't strategically effective for us, right, was never addressed. And it's just sort of, we're going in a different direction, right? First of all, you're wasting all that time and money in between when you kind of suspect that maybe this isn't the right approach, which is totally fine. Because sometimes you see more things than we do. You hear more things. You get more feedback. You get more data than we do, right? Because of that gap, there's that lost opportunity for your company, right? That maybe it amounts to weeks, maybe it amounts to months. But that's even more important than, hey, that wasn't fair that we didn't know that that was a problem. That's advice to you so that you can maximize the value of whatever agency you're working with.
That's critical. And Nicole, you said, hey, look, I don't want feedback and praise just for my own ego. But, I would say, don't underestimate that. Like, as if you're a manager of someone, tell them that they do a good job. It costs you nothing. You did a great job with that. Make people feel good. And agencies are just the same. You want them to enjoy working with you and to bring their best game, not to just have a transaction where, it's lacking in emotion and I'm paying you this fee and you're giving me these services. You want the team to enjoy working with you, and praise goes both ways. I will often on client meetings tell our clients, you did a great job with that. You're really, we really enjoy working with you and we like this about working with you. And they'll say the same, and because I think that strengthens the relationship. So you want them to come to work and think, hey, I'm going to bring my best game, because we're all human. And I do think that's it costs nothing to give people some praise when they do a good job. Equally, I have a point here about sort of limiting side quests. I think that, and Ian mentioned a few of them, and I think just keeping the main thing, like we're going in this direction, this is the program that we're running, and trying to sort of limit, there's lots of other sort of little tangential things that we could do, because you're working inside your company. There's lots of initiatives that are coming. You've got to be the filter a little bit so that the agency doesn't get sort of flicked around on the end of the whip, kind of going in lots of different directions, even if there's internal decision-making about changes in strategy. Try and keep them sort of even. And I feel like, for example, and that goes also to questions you should ask about the program, but like, let's take SEO. SEO, you're trying to sort of glimpse darkly into what's going on with user behavior through the Google algorithm. There are a million questions that you could have. Hey, why is the traffic gone up in this month? Why is this keyword position gone down? How does this compare to last quarter or the quarter before? Like, there's lots of questions. These are great questions, right? And you can have an interactive dashboard that answers many of them. But there's a lot of questions that you might have that would take some time to research and unpack. And unless those questions are going to end in some actionable change in strategy, I might suggest, look, it would be nice to know. Do we need to know it? Is it worth spending time and budget for the agency to work that out rather than executing something else? And so I often feel this a lot more in SEO than maybe in other areas of the program, because there's just so much data and there's so many questions, and it's fascinating. Like, oh wow, this is happening. But at the end of the day, you've got to publish more content and execute to be able to rank, and so limiting that a little bit is really important. Let's talk about, on our fifth thing, when things go wrong, because they will go wrong. And if they don't, you're probably not taking enough risks and sort of pushing it. Things are going to go wrong. You're going to try things that have never been tried before because the risk and reward are out there. And sometimes those things are not going to be successful. Sometimes things that were successful in the past are not successful again for reasons we couldn't Unforeseen because the market is changing, tactics change, the world is complex. Things are going to go wrong, then that's okay. It's how you handle them that is critical. What do you normally advise clients on this, Nicole?
You're right. Things are going to go wrong. Sometimes I call them plot twists because they happen, and it doesn't necessarily mean anybody screwed up. To your point, Morgan, maybe just the market's a little bit different than it was 6 months ago, or maybe we all thought this would work and it just didn't. Our best guess is still a hypothesis. The data is going to tell us what that story really is. I think it's important not to always assume it's the agency's fault. And I'm not saying that because I work for an agency, but there could be something on your end. I think it's realistically, if something went wrong, where did it go wrong and why? Because if it is on your end, there could be something internal going on. There could be some kind of systematic thing that maybe you guys have a hiccup that you need to fix so that it doesn't happen again. I think it might be tempting to just throw the agency under the bus and move on. And if it is the agency's fault, a good agency is going to say, you know what? We screwed up or we dropped the ball and it's not going to happen again. And we're going to do what we can to make it right. But always look at what happened and why. And some things may just be a little blip in the market. Some things may be bigger, a more underlying issue in your organization that, hey, maybe it's a good thing that this little plot twist happened right now because you can address it, you can fix it, and now you know about it and it won't happen again.
Yeah, I think it's an important moment in every campaign when things go wrong. You can see what that relationship really looks like and what those expectations really are. I mean that on both sides. So how does the agency react? Does the agency leader pass blame down the team? Or does the agency leader accept that as the first stop, the buck stops here? Likewise, how does our marketing contact, our marketing partner manage that, right? What seems to be the thing that is the matter? Is it how it's perceived internally at their company? Is it they're worried about our capabilities and consistency? Looking at the problem, and why it's a problem is an important part because you can separate out there's stuff that's like, okay, there was a mistake made. Somebody made a typo. Somebody pressed enter and let a big press release go out before it was supposed to, right? We've seen some of these examples. Some of those, they're fatal errors for that relationship because they're just not tolerable. But if the conversation is focusing on future-proofing the partnership, right, then you're probably going to reach a higher ground as a result of this error because you've got a litmus test of what bad looks like. You know what rattles and creaks and what matters at that organization and to your contact. So from a relationship thing, it can be really informative. And the problems I'm kind of thinking back to have been usually a result of not having processes perfectly defined yet, or not understanding where processes need to be layered in, right? It's usually not personalities. It's understanding that an organization is sort of a mechanism with a lot of connections that you need to keep running. The marketing contact and the agency that wants to work on the problem that way, rather than taking out the fingers and looking at who can we call the root cause, those are the ones that are successful.
Our next point here is execute. And I think the most vital part to get the most out of your agency is to make stuff happen. Material has to be approved. SEO articles have to be published. We often say, hey, you don't get any ranking for a Google Doc. Things have to get out there. And so I think if I look at the programs that work the best, we have a partner on the other side who is oriented towards action and making things get approved and to happen as quickly as possible. If things are just piling up on the other side, no agency is going to be successful at all unless things can actually convert and get out there. Emails are pushed out, press releases are done, pitches are approved. It doesn't matter what the things, but execution is really important. And why does that happen? Because you have a partner on the other side who has the authority and the knowledge and the confidence to authorize the program to happen. And without that, all the best practices and all the best practice and the process and everything go to nothing. All the best ideas will just die if they're just sitting in a Google Doc.
It's like the tree. If it doesn't get into market, it's not going to make an impact. Just like the tree falls and it doesn't make a sound. You're right. We can talk about finding a good partner and having a great working relationship. And, we all really like each other and we're totally on board with what our goals are, what the strategy should be. But if we can't get anything into market at the end of the day, we can't achieve our goals and you can't achieve your goals. So it's crucial when you're thinking about hiring an agency of who's going to be that day-to-day contact, who's going to kind of ferry these approvals along. And it may just be, look, I need to send this over to this subject matter expert to make sure, that all the technical details are just right. But it's something you have to give consideration to. Do you have time to manage the agency, to manage these requests, to actually get things into market? Because if not, you're going to reach the end of your scope and it's going to be like, well, what did we actually accomplish? We've got a pile of Google Docs and that's about it. We've got nothing to show for it.
You don't want to just be good at making plans. You have to be good at making results. And I think that applies to, Morgan made reference to this, that their ability to internally get the support that they need. And that doesn't just mean from their boss or something. It means from all of their colleagues who could help color the page a little bit better for us. There's a stark difference in those organizations who we work with, who are sort of where the contact is not able to quickly create consensus and excitement around ideas. And that excitement is part of it, right? I made reference to this earlier. Like, they should be passionate about the goals that we're setting. It should be as important to them to free our workflows as it is to us. And sometimes I hear about, well, an agency needs care and feeding, or an agency takes up so much of my time or gives me things to do, right, that I don't have time to do. Well, I think you got to get back to that, one of our earlier steps then, about setting goals and understanding what we're here for, right? And what we're capable of. We know we don't play ping pong with you. We don't go, oh, thank you for that. Here's it back. Can you do something else for us? Like, we understand, and most agencies do, right? But there's also is that common case of the client says, oh yes, I'll get right on that. And then we get to the next call and they say, oh yes, we'll get right on that. And we get to the next call and so on and so forth. And then you get to the end of the quarter and they go, we didn't do enough of those things. So you absolutely have to be executing for us.
The last point here is a little bit different. I think this is about understanding the agency's business. And why do I say that? Because an agency is an entrepreneurial venture full of ambitious and talented people too. And they want to grow and they have their own careers and they want to do exciting things, right? And award-winning programs. And they want to help you with your business. So taking the time to understand, how is the agency doing? What new services do they have? Who have they hired? What new campaigns are they running for other clients? What are they seeing? And just mechanically, how do they make their money, right? How is your behavior helping them with their business? And so I think that's really important. And many client contacts, I've worked in an agency, so they sort of, inherently understand what an agency is like. And that makes them a great client contact because they can understand the context. But, that's not universal. And so if you haven't come up through an agency, which is totally fine, take the time to understand, ultimately they're selling their time. They may value price it. They may do it in a different kind. They may do it on activities, but they have time. and which they're buying in bulk through lots of people, and they're selling it in smaller portions to you, and understand that. I think just showing that you are interested in their success, again, goes to that point about praise and sort of, commitment. I'll often have our senior client contacts take me aside and say, look, how are things going? And what are you seeing? And how can I help you? So a key point here is referrals. Like, if you like the agency that you work with, please do refer them to others, because they could help other brands as well. And the agency will love you if you refer. In fact, many agencies, and we're not, us included, get a lot of their business through referrals. Hey, this person told me that you were great and you've done good work for them. I respect them. Maybe you can help me.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is one of the more complex purchases to make, right? A marketing agency or a public relations agency. It's really hard to figure out what a good one is, as hard as a car mechanic. And I'll tell you, I tell everybody about my great car mechanic. No free ads here, but yeah, because it's an area where we so desperately just want someone we can trust, who's not going to sell us more than we need, who's not going to pretend that they can solve a problem that they can't, right? It's really similar. You are a huge friend to someone when they get their car fixed after 3 mechanics said, I don't know what's wrong with it, right? That's a gift that you're providing to them, not just the car mechanic, right? And the thing that I wanted to add is that, like, we're also employers, right? And we want to give new opportunities to our employees when they are able to experience new industries, new, or not necessarily fully new industries, but new niches, new campaign tones, new types of companies. They become better at all of their clients' work, right? And to give them more opportunities, right, to keep them on your team, right, we need to be growing. All agencies do. We as a field are relatively driven by younger folks who are trying to gather as much experience as possible. And while we are a more senior team than average, we too want to continue to learn and grow in our careers. So your referrals aren't just a commercial benefit to us. They enrich our people. They make our overall offering more attractive to the next junior person that we're going to recruit.
We've been talking today about how to manage an agency. And just to recap the 7 points there: select the right partner. There are lots of agencies. Take the time up front to get one that is going to solve your problem at the right sort of fit and who you want to work with. Number 2, set the right goals and allocate the right resources. Number 3 was brief the agency. Make sure you're giving them the right amount of information up front and giving them a good understanding of your business. We talked about some best practices about working together, the level of contact, just making sure you're listening to their advice, making sure you're giving them the chance to shine. We talked about, hey, things are going to go wrong. Build the relationship before so that you can understand that and sort of frame that correctly. Some of those mistakes are going to happen. Some of them are going to be fundamental. The relationship can't go forward. Others are going to be, let's hope that those are vanishingly small. Others are going to be things that we can learn from. So, how you handle those on both sides and how the agency handles them, I think, is critical to the success. Number 6 is execute. Be prepared to execute and get stuff done. That's where we all enjoy getting scores on the board. That's vital for the relationship to succeed. And then the 7th point is take a bit of time to understand their business. And I think that will help strengthen your appreciation of how to manage them and the value that you get out of that agency too. There are many other tips that we could go into here, but hopefully that's given you a pretty broad perspective. I really enjoyed talking to you, Nicole and Ian. Thanks for your time.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks, Morgan. Bye, everyone.
Well, that about wraps it up for today. But before we close, we did want to offer all of our Fired Up friends a chance to grab a mega pack of all of our ebooks and guides. That's our guide to content marketing. That's our startup guide to paid media using Google Ads. It's our guide to attribution. You can get all of those, over 100 pages of goodness, at firebrand.marketing/firedup freebies. That's freebies with an S. And we hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, please give us a rating wherever you get your podcasts, or drop us a note at firebrand.marketing. And as ever, the details of how to get in touch with our guest today can be found in the show notes. Thank you for listening. And until next week, get out there and crush your marketing goals.